Whenever you are ready.
All right, guys, well, welcome to space. Today we're going to go over the possibilities and values of space exploration. Now, before I start, let me tell you all why space is such an important topic and why we should just be interested in it. It's cool. I mean, come on, guys, we all seen Star Wars. Like, space is pretty cool. Zach, don't try and tell us that Star Trek is cool because we haven't watched it. It's not cool. It's dumb. Obviously, there are a bunch of other reasons why space exploration is important, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So the definition of space exploration is the ongoing discovery and exploration of celestial structures in outer space by means of continuously evolving and growing space technology. Now you might be wondering, Smith, space is cool, but why does any of this really matter? Well, the answer to that is that space research is so much more than just flying into space and looking at stars and moons and planets. It's about how the challenges of going to space ultimately result in scientific and technological advancements that we use today here on Earth. Well, to explain how space is relevant, around a decade ago, Elon Musk stated that he wanted to explore and colonize Mars. I think it's a little too soon, but whatever works for him, I guess. 3 years ago, Donald Trump introduced Space Force. We haven't heard much about this since he said anything about it, but it's still a thing. It still exists. Space exploration is becoming more and more popular, and many people question if space is worth our time and money. However, it's crucial for us to realize how important space exploration is and how many benefits it gives our world. Space research is essential for human flourishing because it provides information for scientific and technological advancements and improves our lives here on Earth. Satellite research is basically just using satellites that we send up to observe our world from an outside perspective and using those observations to make Earth a safer and cooler place, I guess. Benefits. There are countless benefits that satellite research brings to the table. For example, satellites are used to monitor and study air, water, and soil pollution and can locate oil spills that create contaminated areas. Without these satellites, we wouldn't have been able to catch the thinning of the ozone layer and discover unsafe areas that have been contaminated with oil. One of the biggest benefits that space exploration has is the ability to monitor climate change. One of Canada's satellites was able to see the Aral Sea shrinking and has been able to see the Arctic Sea's glaciers melting from space. And before we've been able to see here on Earth, so we've been able to catch it and react to it a lot faster. Our governments use satellites to watch over our environment and discover changes that are essential to maintaining our world safety. One of the biggest benefits that satellite research has is the ability to monitor climate change. Canada's RadarSat satellites are used to facilitate marine surveillance, monitor the environment, and enact disaster management. It's safe to say that without satellites, we would have much less knowledge of our world and how it operates. Space research is a catalyst for scientific and technological advancement. For example, the satellites that orbit Earth every day are much more advanced than the ones that we sent up a couple decades ago. This is because scientists have to continually and chronically improve old technology and develop new technology in order to advance our knowledge of our world and what's around us. Space exploration has resulted in so many pieces of technology that we use every day here on Earth. Technology that was first used to collect rock and soil samples on the moon in 1963 was then developed into the Dust Buster, which is a cordless vacuum cleaner by the company Black & Decker. An ethylene scrubber that was used to clean the International Space Station has been innovated to purify air. On the Apollo mission, scientists needed to create a water purifier that kills bacteria and viruses. That water purifier is now used to make water safe to drink in Australia and other poor countries that don't have access to clean, clear water. The resistant material that was used in the Viking lander parachutes has since been used by Goodyear to add thousands of miles to their tires. In addition to vacuum cleaners, purifiers, and tires, scientists wanted to track how an astronaut's eye moves during long periods of time in space. After successfully developing this technology, surgeons began to use it to track their patients' eyes during LASIK eye surgery, ensuring a safe and successful surgery. Thanks to their original technologies, we have improved and created countless inventions that make our lives easier and safer. Without the ongoing challenges of exploring space, it is difficult to predict when many of these inventions would have been created. Yes, these discoveries are not life-changing, they definitely create a safer environment for us to live in. In addition to making our lives easier and safer, space exploration has also heavily increased our knowledge of each other. The International Space Exploration Coordination Group includes that space research gives us a better understanding of human biology. For instance, after studying the human body's response to extended periods of time in the International Space Station's microgravity environment, we now have a better understanding of the human aging process. Because when you're in space and when there's low gravity, your body doesn't have to work as hard. And so when they sent twins up to space, or one twin went up to space and one stayed down, the one that came down looked a lot younger than the one that didn't go up because his body didn't age as hard. The group also includes that implantable heart monitors were developed from the circuit system of NASA satellites. On top of that, NASA's light technology is now used as a light-based anti-cancer therapy that relieves cancer's painful side effects. Moreover, artificial limbs were made from the artificial muscle systems, robotic sensors, and diamond joint coatings that was first used for robotic arms in the International Space Station. These examples show how what was first used for space is now used by us every day to monitor and save the lives of countless people. Before we take a closer look at one invention that was a result of space research, let's look at our word of the day. This is polybenzimidazole, which is also known as PBI, and it's a synthetic fiber with a high decomposition temperature. This means that a material made from this can withstand unreasonably high or low temperatures. This fiber gained popularity when NASA used it first to create suits for their astronauts and protect their bodies from the extreme conditions of space exploration. A few years later, the International Association of Firefighters saw the success of this material and used it to design firefighting equipment, and is now codified in the National Fire Protection Association's official standards for personal protective equipment. Thanks to space research, firefighters can feel confident running into burning buildings knowing that they are protected by this material. In addition to firefighting equipment, PBI is now used in building insulation. Buildings insulated with this material will burn much slower, giving firefighters more time to do their jobs. PBI is also the replacement of asbestos, which was first used to insulate buildings. The problem with asbestos is that when buildings were burning that were insulated with this material, would release a chemical that's toxic for us to breathe in. Those that breathed it in will get mesothelioma, or asbestosis, which is the lung cancer caused by asbestos. In addition to its non-toxicity, PBI lasts 2 to 9 times longer than asbestos and is also much, much cheaper. A study published by the International Space Exploration Coordination Group displays how space missions increase the number of physical sciences, engineering, and mathematical sciences PhDs earned. When John F. Kennedy began the Apollo program in 1961, the number of PhDs earned skyrocketed. So we started here, and when people saw how cool space was, people started learning more and more about it, and I just think that's pretty cool. This shows us that space exploration inspires children to learn more and more about these subjects. A 2009 survey concluded that 50% of the scientists who published in Nature journal reported that the Apollo mission inspired them to become scientists, and that 89% of those scientists also agreed that space exploration inspires younger generations to study science. By inspiring younger generations to learn more about math and science, space exploration creates more brilliant minds in our world. Many might question whether or not God calls us to explore space. Luckily, the Bible speaks about this topic many times. In Genesis 1:28, God commands us to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and to have dominion over it. This command clearly tells us that the earth and everything in it is our responsibility. While the world is not ours, we are called to subdue it. By exploring space, we will have proof that we have subdued the earth and are now moving to subdue what comes next. In Psalm 8:3, David writes that the moon and the stars are the work of God's fingers, and 3 verses later, he says that God has made humans rulers over the works of his hands. If God created the moon and the stars with his hands, and has called us to rule over the works of his hands, then it is clear that we are called to rule over not only this world, but what comes outside. Lastly, in Genesis 2:15, we are told that the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. One of the very first things that God tells us to do is to look after this world. Space exploration provides us with endless possibilities of scientific advancement that can battle issues like global warming and pollution. So it is clear that our job is to protect Earth and subdue the world. There is no doubt that space exploration is part of that responsibility. Personally, I believe that we have discovered so many life-saving scientific advancements through space research, and without it, we wouldn't have as great of an understanding of the world that we live in. The challenges of space exploration have resulted in countless new technologies that we use every day. Yes, it's very expensive and very time-consuming, but I believe that the pros outweigh the cons and that there is just too much to learn from space exploration for us to just not take the opportunity because of its financial costs. The possibilities of space exploration are endless, and there is no reason for us to stop now. A couple months ago,
My apologies. That's my fault.
A couple months ago, Mr. Satterfield asked me this question that he told me to ask me. He said, how do people like us value space exploration from down here? And I thought a lot about it, and I really determined that, like, a plumber or a teacher can't just like look up in space and give a thumbs up to everyone and just say like, good job, you're doing great. It's really just us appreciating where all of these technologies that we have now, where they came from, and appreciate their history. Because a lot of technologies like LASIK eye surgery and the human aging process, we don't really understand where they came from. We just think that they came from our studies here on Earth, and we don't understand that by going to space, it's not just about looking at the moon and stars, it's about what we can learn about ourselves. Thank you.
All right, first of all, very sorry about the interruption. But second of all, we got several guests with us, or a couple guests with us. I'd like to offer it to you if you'd like to, if you got any questions or comments for Smith?
Do you think, like, we will ever actually have people living on Mars in your research? Do you think, like, that's just do you think that's a realistic dream of, like, Elon Musk, or you think it's just him trying to make sensationalized headlines?
Well, I know Elon Musk doesn't fail to make headlines very easily, but on a lot of things that he said that he's going to do, he's done it, and probably won't happen by the time that we're alive, but he wants to do it in the next decade, and so I think that is probably not possible. We're probably going to have to do a couple other things first, like get there, but I think in time we might be able to. But it'll be a long time.
Well, put it. Oh, go ahead.
I was like, would you feel safe? Like, would you want to have money, want to spend money to, you know, whatever, hundreds, thousands of dollars to take a SpaceX? Would you go? Would you spend the money to go?
To go into space?
If you had the money, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like on one of his flights that he takes people on.
If he's proven that going to Mars, even if I don't know if we're talking about Mars or just space.
Or just like, you know how he, like a couple times people have gone.
Right, yeah, like Jeff Bezos, when he paid. Yeah, I would, yeah, sounds awesome. I'd love to. Like I said, space is cool. I would definitely do it. Yeah.
Get the kids up there, screw the crews, we're going to space.
Everyone's a space, guys.
Well, I mean, put it in perspective, we got on the moon in '69.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to admit this, but that was in my lifetime. So, well, in my lifetime. And, I mean, so you don't really see the progress, and, you know, sudden progress takes 20 years to do, I get it, but, yeah, I mean, I grew up in the shuttle, with all the space shuttle when that was brand new, watched the maiden flight, watched Challenger crash, I've seen, you know, the last one, all that happened. It would shock me if the first explorers don't die on Mars before you're my age.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
I do think they'll probably die there, the first ones, just like the people that came to the New World, you know,
Right. Yeah,
centuries ago.
very new place, and like you said, like I said earlier, we're continually, like, always evolving the technology to go to space, and so I know Elon Musk is definitely not stopping his research, so who knows? Could be soon, could be later.
Are you planning a career in?
I have no clue what I want to do. I'm going to school for engineering, so I guess I follow this graph about how it gives me more engineering degrees, but I have no clue. Maybe.
Smith, I got a couple questions for you. All right, so you mentioned, and you kind of already touched on this. You mentioned that too soon to go to Mars, obviously, because too soon to colonize Mars.
Right.
Because as you mentioned, like step one, get there, much less stay there, right?
Right.
Why is your only reason for thinking that is just that we don't currently have the technology to? Like what? Why do you suppose it's too early to colonize Mars?
Well, like I said, it's too early because we haven't been there yet. So I think once we're there and in order to colonize something, we have to get a lot of people there.
Right.
And so I think what we have to first do is land a couple people there and see if it is possible for us to live there.
And let me further the question a little bit. So, it's too early because we don't have the technology, but it seems like what you're discussing here is that it seems like the intent or the desire to get there preceded the ability to get there, right? Like the history of space exploration, it wasn't started by an engineer saying, "Hey, I invented a way to get to the moon. Let's do it."
Right.
It was a politician saying, and really it's a lot of Cold War type geopolitics going on where it's like, we're not going to let the Soviet Union beat us into space.
Right.
We can't afford to. I know a lot of it was a security issue. And so it was like the demand, to borrow an economics term, the demand for it preceded the ability to do it. You know, like one, and so one leads to another, right? So I guess what I'm asking is if we've been so long with the ability to be in outer space, like what demand do you suppose we would need to get people there? Like right now, it's like you think it's cool, Elon Musk thinks it's worthwhile, but at one point in time, like everybody was on board with this thing.
Right.
So
Like, kind of like what I was talking about in the graph earlier, like when we have those space missions, people start to get a rise in the liking of it and start to learn more about it, but we really haven't had much of that recently. Not a lot of people have been talking about it, and so it's not really been as popular recently. And so I guess to answer your question, like what will we need? We just need more people to talk about it, more people to go on missions to space, do things that we haven't seen before. Like we've been to the moon. If we talk about how we've been to the moon before, we're gonna say, cool, what's next? So I know we've recently like landed on like an asteroid or something. So if we keep doing stuff like that and keep spiking people's interests, then
So it's almost like a snowball effect that we need to just gain momentum there. Here's another question for you, and this is sort of off topic, but you mentioned something, I think you mentioned something about it in your paper, but I know we've talked about it. In your opinion, feel free to just completely be opinionated here. All of this takes a lot of money,
right.
takes a lot of attention and energy. Do you think this needs to be primarily in the hands of a government, like with NASA or Space Force, or do you think it needs to be in the hands of a private or a corporation or what have you? Like, who would you prefer to lead this? A government official or a CEO?
Well, it really depends on the education of those types of people. Like I know government officials are educated, but I also know Elon Musk probably has more education than most of those government officials. Maybe not as much experience, but he's worked hard learning all about this type of stuff. I know he has more money to use. He's the richest man in the world. So I guess whatever will get us there the safest, whatever could get the most support, I guess. I think the government will get more support. I think Elon Musk would get more money, resources. So
maybe collaboration of some sort,
Exactly.
Contracting and whatnot.
Yeah.
Cool. Classmates, you got any questions for Smith? Go ahead, Leonard.
I know you didn't discuss much on this, and I'm not sure if you did any research on it, but they've seen asteroids come by with millions of pounds of valuable metals
Mhm.
being able to extract, that you could hypothetically extract.
Right.
And would you be for or opposed to mining those asteroids to try to bring metals back to help Earth?
I don't see why not. If it's safe for it to do, then sure. But, I mean, obviously before we do any of that, we're gonna have to do a lot of research to see if it's safe for us to mine those, how we're gonna do it. But yeah, my whole presentation is just about how the challenges that affects us and gives us more technological advancement. So if we do that, who knows what comes next. Yes.
Do you want little Mars?
Well, sure. I mean, it'll be cool to see what it's like. Maybe not live there my whole life because this place is pretty cool. I don't want to just leave here, but I'd like to, if it's safe, if there's enough research behind it, go check it out.
Why can't you just colonize the moon instead?
People are wanting that. People are wanting to make a space station on the moon, and I know Elon Musk is working on that. I think the government is trying to get behind that too a little bit, but sometimes we have other issues that people believe and also are more important than this. So I guess we just haven't gotten there yet. Not a lot of recognition about it. TJ?
So, like, as far as housing, like, what do you think, like, about, like, do you think they'll ever be able to, like, have houses on there, like, people building stuff, and, like, when you say live, like, living on these planets or whatever, is it gonna be the same type of lifestyle as what we doing here? Like,
Well, it'll probably be much different because we can't breathe the air that's on Mars. And so this is Elon Musk's plan right here.
what is that?
He wants, it's like, these are where all of us would live, I guess, and then these are like the satellite communication places, and these are like the tunnels that we'd have to walk through because you can't breathe Mars because they don't have oxygen. And so like, it would be so much different than what we live in here
Yeah.
because there'd be a lot less open windows.
So basically, we would be living like in boxes, basically.
Pretty much, yeah, until we design suits or something that is able for us to walk outside and breathe well. So.
Do you think the problem with space, like space travel, will be like we develop technology, we go into space, and then we develop newer technology, and then we reach that point?
Yeah, pretty much. That's how it's been since the beginning of trying to do this. Like, we make a plan to go like the moon, but first we got to go to space. So we're going to go to space, and then once we get that research done, once we realize how we can survive in space, we're going to go to the moon and see how we can, like, we land on the moon. So that comes in steps. So we're going to go as far as we can until we feel like we're not advanced enough to go any farther.
But like think more literal sense, because like you remember Ender's Game?
Mm-hmm.
They had older spaceships that were going to the alien world, and they had the newer spaceships that had like hyperdrives, and they met them. Those guys had already been in space for like 20 years.
Yeah.
The new guys had been in space for like 6 months. You think that'll happen?
I don't know. I mean, like, this is what they're doing right now in space. Like I said, people are working, but there's not a lot of coverage about it. Not a lot of people are talking about it. And so that could very well happen, but it's got to take, there's going to be a lot of steps that got to get there first.
So, have you done any research on like the time it takes to get to like planets like Mars and back? Because
I'm pretty sure it takes like at least like 3 years to get to Mars.
yeah, that's what.
And so for us to, it'll take years to get there. And then,
So that's a 6 year. That's a 6 year like round trip just to get back.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, like, a lot. That's why I'm saying like Elon Musk's plan to colonize Mars is a little too soon because we got to get there first. We got to put people there, and that's going to take time in the first place. So.
Just to toss it out there, NASA says it takes about 7 months to get to Mars.
Really?
7 months. And to put that in contrast, the first folks that came from Europe to the New World took about 3 months.
How long does it take to get to the moon?
Less than a day, an afternoon, basically.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Because like when Armstrong did it, it didn't take him, like, he did it in one day, so.
And a lot of this is, that's going off of like, 60-year-old technology by this point.
Yeah, and it's so much
So why
better.
haven't they built that?
They have.
That's his presentation. It's like, why not? Michaela?
Do you think there's gonna be like a moral debate with the living on Mars? Because like, I'm not saying this, I'm just thinking like people like, God gonna create the air for us to breathe, so do you think like it's right for us to colonize on it?
Yeah, that's definitely a point. And in Psalm 8, it said that David writes that God made the moon and the stars with his fingers, and then in 8:6 he says he's made us rulers over the works of his hands. And so we can't breathe the air on the moon, but God still called us to rule over it. And so that can be extended into Mars and to everything else. So.
Good job.
Good job, Smith.